Hello and welcome to another episode of Virtual Legality. I'm your host, Richard Hoeg, managing member of the Hoeg Law Business Law Firm of Northville, Michigan. And today, let's just get right into it. We have an announcement from Cyberpunk 2077, who says we have important news regarding Cyberpunk 2077's release date we'd like to share with you today. Cyberpunk 2077 won't make the April release window, and we're moving the launch date to September 17th. Oh no, I've pulled up the wrong one. Heavens. Maybe I need to look at another one. Here's another announcement from Cyberpunk 2077. We have decided to move the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 from September 17th to November 19th. That's not news. We knew that was the date already. Wait a minute. There's another announcement on Twitter. As of today, this is the right one. October 27th, 2021. Maybe when Cyberpunk 2077 finally releases. Who's to say? Hey, everyone. Today, we've decided to move the release date of Cyberpunk 2077 by 21 days. And we talk a lot about corporate messaging in this space. And we talk about how they try to frame their message. Hey, it's just 21 days. We're not even going to use 3 weeks because maybe that sounds to be a little bit too long. It's just 21 days. The new release date is December 10th. Most likely, there are many emotions and questions in your head. So first and foremost, please accept our humble apologies. The biggest challenge for us right now is shipping the game on current gen, next gen, and PC at the same time, which requires us to prepare and test 9 versions of it. Xbox One, X, compatibility on Xbox Series S, X, PS4/Pro, compatibility on PS5, PC, and of course, Stadia, while working from home. Since Cyberpunk 2077 evolved towards almost being a next-gen title somewhere along the way, we need to make sure everything works well and every version runs smoothly. We're aware it might seem unrealistic when someone says that 21 days can make any difference in such a massive and complex game, but they really do. Some of you might also be wondering what these words mean in light of us saying we achieved Gold Master some time ago. Passing certification, or going gold, means the game is ready, can be completed, and has all content in it. It also means that that is what's going to be pressed to the disc if for some reason you can't connect this thing to an online service. But it doesn't mean we stop working on it and raising the quality bar. On the contrary, this is the time where many improvements are being made, which will then be distributed via a day 0 patch. This is the time period we undercalculated. We feel we have an amazing game on our hands and are willing to make every decision, even the hardest ones. If it ultimately leads to you getting a video game you'll fall in love with, yours, Adam Badowski and Marcin Owinski over at CD Projekt Red. Obviously, I made this video because I'm excited about Cyberpunk 2077, as I know a lot of you are. The Witcher 3 is one of my favorite games of all time, and yet, even in 2020, even in the land of COVID and coronavirus and dealing with quarantines and working from home, CD Projekt Red has really taken this top slot of delay after delay after delay in a way that is even unexpected this year. Yes, we had Halo Infinite be delayed, and that was absolutely destructive to Microsoft and their Xbox, especially Series X launch plans, but they just moved it out into 2021 sometime. They said, hey, we don't even know when this thing's going to get finished. We're just going to look at it again. Cyberpunk, as was demonstrated by my brief accidental looks at the announcements from earlier this year, has instead taken this grinding, terrible approach to fans who are excited about the product. Don't do this, right? Don't do this. We talk about business and marketing in this space. Don't have 4 separate release dates in one single year when your biggest fans are excited about your product. It's enormously difficult for marketing and for people to just retain a certain amount of hype. Now, Cyberpunk 2077 might beat all of that advice, right? Because it is by far one of the biggest games to release maybe this year, or at least in 2021, or whenever they finish the product. And it will be exciting. It will be something that people are excited to play. It will be something that continues to be exciting as the next generation gets updated for this particular game. The release that they are eventually going to make, maybe in December of this year, is actually not optimized for the next generation at all because development has been so long, and because, as you can see here, they were originally aiming to release this in 2019. And I pull that from Jason Schreier, who put out a series of tweets in May of last year that said that internally they were aimed at 2019, but belief around the studio was that that was an unrealistic target, evidently so. And so they announced that April 16th, 2020 release date with Keanu Reeves and everything else at E3 2019, which I know feels like 10 years ago, but was really only about a year and a couple of months ago. April 16th, 2020 became September 17th, 2020, became November 19th, 2020, became December 10th, 2020. And now we're looking at a date that is very, very unusual for the AAA space, right? You are after the Video Game Awards. You are after people really talking about their top 10 games of the year and collecting that kind of influencer cachet if you're looking for sales from that particular avenue. You're really after when most sales folks will tell you that most of the Christmas spending occurs, that at the holiday season, you're aimed for November so that people can be sold your products when they are going to retail on Black Friday or whenever else. Now that all might be completely different in 2020. Who's to say? Nobody knows exactly what the holiday shopping season is going to look like this year, but December 10th for a AAA product is enormously unusual for those reasons. Another couple things I want to tease out of this particular release is that we see no reference to some of the things that have been discussed about Cyberpunk in the past month or so, right? If you remember, we did a video earlier this year called Cyberpunk 2077, and this was about the fact that CD Projekt Red was going to be asking its people at its studio in Poland to basically work Saturdays for the last 6 weeks of development. You see no reference to that crunch or lack of crunch here in this notification. So a number of people came and asked me, they said, Rick, do you think they're not going to crunch for these last 3 weeks? And I think they absolutely 100% are. And because of that, you're going to see articles on this particular product, again, from the usual suspects, right? When you see these kinds of things, you get articles like this from Kotaku. Video game delays cause more crunch. You get articles like this from Jason Schreier that talk about crunch. He will have an article like this in Bloomberg where he now works. I can almost guarantee it, because there is going to be that question. Okay, you need 21 more days to hit this window where AAA games really aren't sold. Why aren't you moving this back further? Why are you pushing people so hard to hit a middle of December date, which is really no man's land for sales of games like this? Why aren't you moving it into January or potentially even later, where games, especially from folks like Capcom, Kingdom Hearts 3, Resident Evil 2, have made significant inroads into selling games in the dead of winter in the United States and elsewhere? Why are you aiming for this specific date? And usually the answer to a question like that is going to be financial reasons. That you haven't released a game as significant as The Witcher 3 for many, many, many years, and you are riding high on those revenues, but eventually you're going to have to release a product. So this is a very unusual announcement, and it's unusual because they aren't talking about crunch, so that's going to be a continued story, a story that they already ate to some extent this past month and are now going to double dip on, because the usual suspects, the journalists that talk about these kinds of things, are definitely going to hold their feet to the fire on an announcement like this one, and you don't get any of the kind of confidence that this is actually going to release on December 10th anyway, because of the behavior that this company has undertaken for the rest of the year. Now, that isn't to say that I'm sitting here in Virtual Legality and saying any of this is bad. I don't want a video game that isn't finished. I don't want you to have announced a video game to be finished 4 or potentially 5 times. Now, they didn't actually announced any release date in 2019, so we're not going to hold that against them. But 4 separate release dates in a single year is demonstrative of a failure of something. A failure of management, a failure of project estimates, certainly a failure of communication, right? And we saw this across the internet as well with respect to this announcement when we saw things like this coming out from Cyberpunk 2077. This is a tweet from October 6th, 2020. No more delays are happening. To which somebody responded on my social media in Lionel Hutz fashion from The Simpsons, adding a comma here after no and an exclamation point at the end of the sentence. No, more delays are happening. And of course, Cyberpunk 2077, the tweet here, is put in a compromising position. So they say, hey, would anyone notice if we delete this real quick? And to their credit, they're not deleting it because it's funny and they want to be a part of the zeitgeist and the community that is ultimately disappointed. Why? Because they are excited for this game to release. But it's worse than that, right? You actually had this same account putting out information like this as of yesterday. Hey, at Cyberpunk Game, before I book the 19th off of work from November, can I have full confirmation the game is going to come out that day? No take backsies. Burnt before, can't wait, Cyberpunk 2077. The Cyberpunk 2077 at Cyberpunk Game Twitter account tweets full confirmation as of 8:48 p.m. yesterday. And this really belies the kind of organizational issues that they're having over at CD Projekt Red. When you get a sequence of events like these separate release dates, when you don't have anybody talking to your community manager, your Twitter account user, and telling them not to say things like full confirmation as of all of 24 hours ago, to someone that's specifically asking the question, are you going to move the date again? Obviously, COVID and working from home plays a factor in all of this, and I'm 100% empathetic. We all just want a good game. We all just want a game that we're excited to play and one that runs well. This announcement says the right things for people, right? It says, hey, we just want to make sure that we're fixing this up with a day one patch that is needed to play the game appropriately. That, of course, raises the secondary questions that video game archivists have had in the past, which is to say these enormous day one patches, what they call here a day zero patch, really take away from the ability to archive a game just by having it on disk. What CD Projekt Red is really suggesting with a statement like this is they aren't really even happy with it being in the public's hands in any respect in the fashion that it appears on the gone gold version of their disk. They need to fix it up pretty substantially, so much so that they need 3 extra weeks to get those fixes in before you actually can play it and they're comfortable with what it is that you are playing. And yeah, that doesn't also sound good, right? I love CD Projekt Red. I love the products that they have put out there. I love the attention to detail and the storytelling that they have put into their games, most especially The Witcher 3. I think Cyberpunk 2077 is very likely to be great. But with that all being said, I can't honestly look at this sequence of events, these sequence of announcements, in a year that's difficult for everybody. That's been difficult for a lot of movie studios, difficult for a lot of video game studios. You saw what appear to be minor release date delays for things like The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima and some other games survive this. And more importantly, not reveal real release date information until they were at least, let's call it, one delay away from getting that game out into consumers' hands. And CD Projekt Red, for all the credit that they deserve, for all the greatness that they put into their games, they do deserve a bit of flack for this sequence of events and the way they have treated the marketing and the release dates. And yeah, I understand COVID's a big problem, but other companies have dealt with it better. And hopefully, at the end of all this, is a game whose greatness really makes you forget this entire sequence. But until that actually happens, I look at this and say, wow, I wish CD Projekt Red were dealing with their management questions, their communication questions, and their project time and efficiency questions a little bit better. Because if it was always going to release on December 10th, maybe they shouldn't have announced it until this summer, and they could have hit a date that they now know is the date they needed to release a game. This has been Virtual Legality for today, a light one, but obviously an important one for folks that are interested in video games, video game release date, and the business that attaches thereto. One of the things to really follow along with this announcement is, are they actually going to lock into December 10th when maybe potentially they could make more money at a later date in a more normal window for sales? Follow that one closely, because I'll be interested to see what marketing analysis comes out of hitting a December 10th window, a very, very odd release date. But if you like talking about business and law of pop culture, most specifically video games, music, movies, television, everything that you already like to read about, please like, subscribe, share, tell folks that we are here in Virtual Legality having these conversations virtually now every day. And if you caught this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. And if you listen to it as a podcast, thank you so much for listening. And I will catch you on the very next episode of Virtual Legality. Virtual Legality is a YouTube video series with audio podcast versions presented as commentary and for education and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you have legal questions about the topics discussed, please consult your own legal counsel.